Hello. How are you? Happy birthday to you. What you doing? How much is that dog in the window?
Hello, I'm Steve Martin, and this is Pogo, a lesser self-requested cockatoo. We'd like to thank you for taking the first step to a better understanding of your bird. Now, you know, people have kept parrots as pets for somewhere around 2,000 years, but never have they been more popular than they are today. The ever-increasing popularity of parrots as pets really took hold around 10 years ago when people started seeing more trained parrots and in parrot shows and on television, and many people just knew that they had to have one. Unfortunately for the birds, many people knew little else about parrots except that they had to have one. Many people tend to think that all parrots should be like this, tame from the day they get them. It's almost as if they relate them to dogs. That's a serious mistake. Now, often for these folks, their new pet is nothing more than a source of frustration and confusion. And even today, good information as to taming and training parrots is almost impossible to find, but the need has never been greater. My first exposure to birds came at a very early age. My father raised birds, and both my parents encouraged my bird interests. I always seemed to have birds around me. I'd sit and study birds for hours, trying to almost read their minds, trying to figure out why they did the things that they did. This gave me great insight into bird behavior. Little did I know at that time that this would be the groundwork for the training techniques that I use today. Now, this videotape covers every important aspect of birds as pets, including health care and management, taming a wild bird, training birds to do tricks and behaviors, talking on cue, and even solving many of the problems associated with parrots. This tape is meant to give guidance to the novice bird owner, as well as to lend new ideas to the experienced bird trainer. Training may seem a bit difficult at first, but have patience. The experience of each successful step will not only bring encouragement and confidence to you, but also to your bird. And remember, experience is the best teacher. But before we cover taming and training, let's first go inside and discuss the care of your bird. A very important thing to consider about having a parrot as a pet is the environment in which he lives. First of all, if you have a new bird, I always recommend having a nice, quiet place in the room that doesn't have a lot of foot traffic like dogs and cats and other things that'll startle and upset him. Nice, quiet corner like this, I think, is just about ideal for a new parrot. The room should not have a draft. Now, many people don't know what a draft is. A draft is a warm room like this with maybe an open door, an open window, or a crack in a window and a door, and a cold breeze blowing between those 2 points. That's a draft. A warm room and a cold breeze blowing through that room. That's a draft, and it can cause a lot of problems with birds. Be aware of drafts. One of the things very important, especially to the bird, is the environment in which he lives, his cage. The cage, I think, should be big enough to let the bird flap his wings and exercise if he feels like he should. Also, toys are always good. Usually that helps promote a healthy mental attitude about his environment, about the cage. I always like toys and things. The cage should be practical. Should be easy to clean. The cage should slide out easily and be readily accessible. And also the cage should be strong enough to hold the bird that you have in the cage. Now, a larger parrot might even be able to break these bars just by biting and bending them. Then might stick his head out and cause himself some serious injury. So always make sure that the cage is strong enough to hold the bird that you have. Now, a lot of parrots are smart enough to open the doors on their own, or learn to open doors just like this. That's why I always recommend using a clip of one type or another. This is one that many people use. I don't usually recommend it because some parrots will even learn to open these kind of clips. This clip is the one that I use on my cages. It's very easy to use. You just wrap it through the bars, screw this little mechanism shut, and it cinches up tight. Few parrots will be able to open that and learn to unscrew this mechanism, which is what it takes to open it. But it's not ideal. What I think is ideal is this right here, a lock. Now you just put this lock right on here, lock it up, take the key out, set the key somewhere near the cage, make sure the parrot doesn't get it, you'll be in good shape. The perch inside the cage is also very important. I think the perches should be of varying sizes. Many people will simply have a dowel like this inside their cage. I don't think this is very good, mainly because it's a constant surface. The bird is made to sit on one point of this perch, and often that will wear on one certain area of the bird's foot. If you have varying sizes, like the large size of this perch, the small size, the bird can choose himself what's comfortable for him to sit on. You'll find that he'll sit in different spots, usually to distribute the weight a little bit different. Perches should also be made of wood so that the bird can chew on them. That helps to keep their beak in good shape so that you won't ever have to file their beak down. The wood chewing is very important. Just like this perch up here, this play perch, which is what it is when the parrot comes out, sits on top, flaps his wings, and plays on this perch. This bird chews a lot on this perch up here. Just throw this dowel away, put another one up there, you're in good shape. I never recommend using anything like plastic or metal, mainly again because it wears on one spot on the bird's foot, and also it can't chew on it. Okay? What you put on the bottom of the cage is also very important. I always recommend having newspaper on the bottom of the cage. Cheap, easy to use, quick and easy. I think it's ideal, but mainly because you can see the bird's droppings very well, and you can notice that the bird has some sort of like diarrhea. And we'll talk a little more about how to spot diarrhea a little bit later on in this tape. Some people use corn cob, dried corn cob, or wood chips. I never recommend that, mainly because, well, for one reason, they're rather expensive, and also some people don't clean those situations near as well as they should. They try and just scoop out the parts that have been contaminated by the bird's feces, and often that's not good enough, because if you don't get it all, it's a great breeding place for bacteria and fungus, which can cause many problems on down the line. So they're hard to clean, hard to take care of. Some people will also use cat litter. I have heard that some types of cat litter can be toxic or poisonous, so I never recommend using them. Sand would be my second choice, only to newspaper. I also recommend you always have a cage cover for your cage. Now this is what I use. This is something very easy. I got this at a fabric store. You can get it at most any fabric store. It's material that comes in a tube. You see that? You buy this off the roll, maybe 3 feet worth or so. If you're like me, you take it over to your mother's house and you ask her to sew the top up, and this even stretches so that it can accommodate most types of cages. Put this over the cage and you're all ready to go. It's very cheap, $3 or $4, so you don't have to worry too much about the bird chewing big holes in it. You replace it every month or 2 months, depending on how much the bird chews in it, or chews on it. Now, I always recommend, oh, by the way, a cage cover should be used at night, especially. That's mainly because there's a lot of drafts at night, cold air outside, warm air inside, but also because if you're like me, you like to sleep past sunrise. And if you've got a good dark cage cover over your bird, a lot of times he doesn't know exactly when sunrise is, and he'll let you sleep in a little bit longer before it starts getting too noisy. Now, with a new bird, I usually recommend that you have their wings and toenails clipped. I usually recommend you do that before you bring them home, and we're going to talk about that next. This is Raja, a Triton cockatoo. He's going to help us demonstrate how to trim wings and toenails here in just a second. But first, let me tell you that if you do go and buy a new bird, I usually recommend that you have the wings and nails done at the pet shop before you bring them home, or at least at a veterinarian. Have somebody else do it. Mainly because at this point, it's a very delicate part of your relationship. You're trying to establish a very positive relationship with the bird, and if you grab the bird and upset him, things like that, it's going to hurt your relationship with the bird. Have somebody else do it. Let him blame it on somebody else. Make somebody else be the bad guy. Also, remember that if you trim your bird's wings, then you're going to have to retrim those birds' wings after the summer, because birds molt once a year. Molting is losing and replacing feathers on the body. Idealistically, a bird will lose and replace every feather on his body. So if you trim the bird in March or May, he's going to molt throughout the summer and the spring and the summer, and then by the end of summer, you're going to have to do it again. All those feathers will have grown in. Now, I always recommend with a larger bird like this, to trim both wings, mainly because a large bird that you've trimmed one wing on is pretty much out of control when he flies off of a perch or your hand and can injure themselves as they land on the ground or crash on the ground. Smaller birds, sometimes it's a little more difficult to restrict their flight, and you have to trim just one wing. Now, I usually say trim the first 6 or 7 feathers of the bird's wing, right down there. First 6 or 7 or 8 feathers usually is what I trim. Some people say leave these first 2. They think it looks a little more cosmetic. I think that if you leave these 2 feathers out there by themselves, they don't have the support of these other feathers right here. And if they fly off of a perch and hit the table or the cage, they're a lot more likely to injure those feathers, even break those feathers. So I usually say clip those first couple. Now, if you have a nice tame parrot like Raja here, you can just open his wing and have somebody come along and trim those feathers. But if you don't, you'll have to wrap him up and restrict him one way or another, which we usually need the help of a friend. Today, I have from the Cincinnati Zoo, the education department especially, Chris Cow now to help me out. Hi, Chris. What we're going to do, we're going to wrap up Raja in a towel like I would normally recommend you do if your bird isn't tame like Raja. Now, the towel and or gloves is good to use almost always because it gives the bird something else to blame it on, so that he won't necessarily hold out his aggressions on you. He can blame it on the towel. Okay, so what we're going to do here, I'm going to help. We're going to try and get Raja wrapped in the towel here. There we go. Told you, they don't like this at all. There we go. Make sure that you get hold of the bird's head right up there. We'll let Chris get hold of the head so that I can free my hands up to do the trimming and things. At this point, you've got the bird wrapped around. It's always best to cover up his head so that he's not looking at you. Now, we're going to show you how we would trim a bird's toenails at this point. Find the foot that you're going to trim right inside here. Get it sticking out. Again, it's pretty important, or usually it's good to cover up the bird's face so that he's not looking at you, so that he really can't blame it on you. He's going to blame it on the towel usually. This is how I would go about trimming a bird's toenails. You bring the foot out like this. You get yourself some dog clippers. Usually dog toenail clippers are really good to use. And you would snip off the toenail just like that. Just the end of it. Right after you snip it off, you get yourself a fingernail file. File it down. File off the rough edge. And you're all done. There we go. Now let's get Raja back up and let's talk a little more. Right, back up on my hand and got to get out of the towel, Raja. Boy, yes. Now, and thanks, Chris. Sure appreciate your help. At this point, it's good to know, or it's important to know that if you do decide to trim your bird's toenails yourself, before you do it, have something to cauterize the bleeding in case you trim those toenails back a little too far. There's a blood vessel that runs right down the middle of that toenail. If you trim it back too far, it'll bleed excessively sometimes. There's many cauterizing agents you can get at pet shops or your veterinarian. If you don't have anything, some first aid sort of treatments, direct pressure on right behind the toenail will usually slow down or stop the bleeding usually. And you can also dip the toenail in some flour or cornmeal at that point, help coagulate the bleeding. Many people wonder how often you should trim the bird's toenails. I usually say that when you start seeing these little holes in your hand and arm from the bird's toenails, that's time to trim them. Okay. Many people are concerned about feather mites and lice and things like that. Very rarely do you have to be concerned with a pet bird about mites and lice. But if you do see little tiny creatures crawling around on your parrot, you might want to take him to a veterinarian and have a checkup, because sometimes that means that the bird isn't really taking care of himself well enough, and it may be a symptom of illness. But if you do decide to treat your bird for mites and lice, there are many sprays that are on the market at pet shops and things. The main active ingredient you want to look for is pyrethrins. They're very safe and non-toxic. You can actually spray them right in the food and it won't hurt them, but whenever you spray your bird in the cage, you want to make sure you take out the food and the water, etc. Now, speaking of food, most everybody has their own theory of what they should feed their bird. I have mine. Why don't we go to the kitchen and look at that? What you feed your bird may be the most important part of having that bird. Now, many people don't even know what their parrot is eating. They give what they feel is a well-balanced diet in the parrot seed cup, but many parrots tend to eat only the food items they like best and tend to disregard the other food that they should be eating. That's why it's important that you learn to recognize the food that your bird is eating by watching the bottom of the cage and seeing the empty seed shells. Now, exactly what foods you should be feeding your bird, there's many opinions, but one thing that most everybody agrees upon is variety. many different type of food items. See, parrots in the wild are at the mercy of the seasons. They eat what food is ripe at that particular time of the year. They do not eat one food all year long. Most parrots are scavengers. They eat seeds and nuts and fruits and even insects and carrion or dead animals. Now, my diet is basically this. What I recommend is 1/3 of the diet sunflower seeds. Some people say you shouldn't feed any sunflower seeds for a few different reasons. I think sunflower seeds are a good part of a bird's diet. 1/3 of the diet, sunflower seeds. Another third of the diet, other seeds like corn and safflower, millet, oat groats, wheat, peanuts, and pumpkin seeds. For larger parrots, you can feed larger nuts like almonds and walnuts, filberts, and Brazil nuts. For smaller parrots, millet spray is wonderful. They love it. You can use this as a treat when you go to train them. Another 1/6 of the diet is monkey chow. This is monkey chow. Very nutritional. You can get it at most old feed stores and pet shops. If you can't get monkey chow, try dog food, dry dog food, or even dry cat food. 1/6 of the diet. The last 1/6 of the diet that I recommend is fruits and vegetables. We've got a whole variety laid out here. Corn, and this is spinach greens and kiwi fruit, beans, pomegranates, papaya, apples, of course, and citrus of various types. But when you feed citrus, make sure you don't put it in these galvanized metal cups. The citrus juice in these cups can be toxic to the parrots. Other fruits that I usually feed is bananas, and here's squash. And by the way, bread, whole wheat bread is very good. Most parrots tend to like it an awful lot. Now, when I feed out the fruits, I usually cut off a piece about like this, leaving the skin on it. Most of the fruits I feed with the skin on it, and I'll feed 1 or 2 different types of fruit a day, but only 1/6 of their diet. Make sure that the fruit that you feed is washed so that you get off the pesticides, the insecticides. Also make sure that it's fresh. Now, there's another type of diet that's on the market. It's a pelletized diet. They take all this food that you see here, put it into a pelletized form, and the nutritional value is wonderful. But some parrots won't eat it readily. I recommend using it as sort of a supplement to their diet, as an additive to their diet, and it's very, very good. Vitamins are wonderful. I always recommend using vitamins. There's types you put in the water, there's powders. I usually dip the fruit in the powdered vitamins and then hand it to the birds. There's also one that comes on this, these are peanuts and raisins coated with vitamins. My birds seem to like this a lot. Health Grit. I don't think Health Grit is nearly as important in parrots as it is in other birds, like, for instance, pigeons. See, pigeons eat hard seeds that they can't break up. They go down into the system, into the gizzard where the grit is, and it's ground up by the grit and then passed on to be digested. Now, with parrots, they eat softer seeds, and they can break them up in smaller pieces, and it's a lot easier to digest. But still, I recommend giving these birds a pinch of this health gravel, maybe every couple months at least, okay? Parrots can eat just about anything in moderation, using your own good judgment, of course, and common sense. My birds eat just about anything I eat, including dairy products and even meat. One person told me she heard at a pet shop you shouldn't give your bird meat because the bird will get the taste of blood and start biting you. Parrots in the wild eat insects and they eat dead animals. I fed my birds meat for years and I've never had a biting problem. Water is essential to all living things. Some people think that birds will get all the moisture, all the water they need from the fruit that they eat. That's not true. Give your birds fresh water daily in a clean cup. Now, feeding your bird a well-balanced diet may be a little extra work, take a little more time, but it will make your bird happy and is essential if you expect your bird to enjoy a long, healthy life.
What?
Hey!
What is Paco?
Old Paco sure enjoys these baths with the spray bottle. And this can be an awful good way to give your bird a bath if your bird likes it. Some birds are scared, nervous of these bottles. Don't make them submit to the bath. If you give your bird a bath outside, make sure it's a nice, warm, sunny day. Make sure it's not too cold for them. And don't leave them to dry in the direct sunlight for too long. That direct sunlight can cause problems with them sometimes. Other birds like to bathe in a bowl, a dish, a sink, or even in the shower sometimes. But let your bird bathe when it would like to bathe. Don't make your bird bathe if it doesn't want to. Many birds will only bathe once or twice a year. Some like to bathe once or twice a week, in the summertime especially. A bath will usually give a bird a nice healthy appearance and a nice healthy attitude. You know, many people think that these parrots can live forever, 60, 80 years. I think that even though they are hardy, if I had to put an average lifespan of a parrot in captivity, it would have to be somewhere closer to 20 years. And I'll tell you why. Parrots seem to hide their symptoms. They don't act sick like a dog or a cat. It's almost like their instincts are telling them that predators prey on the sick and injured. For that reason, when you notice that the parrot is sick, sometimes it's often too sick or too sick to hide its symptoms anymore, too sick to do anything about. Let me tell you some early symptoms you should start looking for. First of all, loss of appetite. They'll stop talking. They won't talk when they're sick or feeling unhealthy. They'll stop playing. They'll act lethargic or just sitting on the perch with their feathers all ruffled up. By the time your bird is on the bottom of the cage with his feathers ruffled up, it usually means that he's too sick to sit on the perch anymore. Other good signs of illness. Nasal passage, nasal discharge. If you notice a mucousy discharge out of your bird's nose, it can be a bacterial infection in the nasal passage. That can, and sometimes does, progress into a lower respiratory infection or pneumonia. A red, swollen, inflamed, runny eye can often be a symptom of something else that's going on inside your bird's body. If you ever see any problems like that, any symptoms, get your bird to a bird veterinarian. Now, don't take him to a dog and cat vet. He'll probably recommend a good bird specialist for you to go to. If you don't have a good bird specialist, you can find one in the phone book, Yellow Pages, under veterinarians, ones that specialize in birds or exotic animals. Pet shops will sometimes recommend them, bird clubs can recommend them, and your own dog and cat vet will recommend them. And when you go to the veterinarian, take a sample of the bird's droppings. He would like to know what's going on in your bird's body, and by looking at the droppings, he can often tell if the bird has diarrhea. You can even tell yourself at home. It's a very valuable symptom of illness, and let me show you how to tell. There's two main parts to the bird's droppings. There is the feces, and there is the urine. The urine should be white or clear and runny, and the feces should be a firm matter that's green to dark green, light green to dark green. Let me show you with Paco here. Here's a normal feces. Now, this normal part right here, this green part, that's the feces, and this white runny part is the urine. It's when this green part starts getting all runny, like that urine, just like this, I stir it up. That's diarrhea. Okay, if you ever see your bird with diarrhea, it can be caused by diet sometimes. Only sometimes. It should only last for a very short period of time, a matter of an hour or 2 hours. Diarrhea for more than half a day or a day, you should go see a bird veterinarian. Don't take your bird to a pet shop, or don't take your problems, your health problems with your bird to a pet shop. Unless the person at the pet shop is a veterinarian and a bird specialist, that person is probably not qualified to treat your bird or give you anything to treat your bird with. So for the sake of your bird, if he's sick, take him to a bird specialist. Now, let's go back inside and talk about taming a wild bird. Some people feel that taming is a process used to bring a bird from its native wild state to the point that it will physically accept people. A parrot that will simply step up on your hand is often considered to be tame. And the methods used to get the bird up on your hand often vary greatly, from wrapping the bird in a towel and scratching its head to touching the bird on its wings and body, hoping that he'll accept that sort of physical contact, to even what I call harassment training, chasing the bird around the cage until he'll get up on your hand. And often with this method, if the bird bites you, you tap him on the beak or hit him. I even saw a method where they show you how to hold the parrot upside down by its tail until it flaps its wings until it's almost physically exhausted. Now, these methods are used quite often by many different people, and they may and probably will get the bird up on your hand. I think they all have two basic things in common. One is they make the bird submit to the trainer like a dog. And two is they give very little thought to the bird's emotional state. Now, I always recommend to people that you use your own good judgment and common sense as to how you want to go about taming or even training your bird. I don't think that any one method is right for all birds. I think that a lot of birds work best with many different methods. But I think you will find that my taming techniques are considerably different from the type that we have just talked about. I think that taming is more emotional than it is physical. I don't think you should try and master your bird, but maybe try and be friends with your bird. Taming is creating a positive relationship with your bird. It's understanding the bird's instincts and emotions, trying to figure out why the bird does the things that the bird does. You can't train a bird like a dog. You can't treat them like a dog. They're not like dogs. They're more sensitive, more independent than dogs. Let me say just a quick word about professional trainers. Some people will take their wild bird to a professional trainer and have this person tame the bird. I think they're missing out on a lot of fun and very good experience. See, the process of taming a bird is developing a good relationship with the bird, developing an understanding of the bird, and opening a line of communication with the bird. If you have somebody else do those things, you miss out on that. And it's very, very valuable that you do those yourself to understand the bird properly. Now, many people don't know how their bird feels about them, or even they don't even give the bird credit for having emotions and feelings. So this is one thing you might try. If you want to tell how your bird feels about you, you might try this, what I call the couch method. If you put your bird in the middle of the couch and you go sit down at this end, you can maybe put the bird's cage down at the other end. If the bird stays in the middle of the couch, it doesn't tell you too much. But if he walks down, maybe gets in his cage or on his cage, or just down to the other end to chew on the other end of the couch, it may tell you that you've got a little ways to go with your positive relationship with the bird. But if the bird walks down toward you and comes down, sits on your shoulder, that's a relationship you want to have with your bird. A bird that would rather be with you if given the opportunity to be someplace else. Now that's exactly like this little bird over here. Her name is Coco, and she's an African gray parrot. I've had her for about 3 years now. And this is what I would consider a tame bird. A bird that would rather be with me if given the opportunity to be someplace else. Now, to get a bird to this point, the best way is to use common sense and find a reason for the bird to like you. You see, common sense tells you the bird doesn't have a reason in the world to like you if it was trapped wild in the jungle and transported through quarantine into the pet shops. Common sense tells you that that bird, every experience it's ever had with people has been negative. It's been taken out of the securities of the jungle and family and friends. There's not a reason in the world for that bird to like you, so you have to give the bird a reason to like you. Best way to do that is something that the bird understands instinctively, like food, especially its favorite food, which you can call a treat. Now, what I always use as a treat with my birds anyway is sunflower seeds, something they really like. You can usually tell what a good treat for your bird is by finding out what type of food the bird eats first when you put the food in the cage, and what type of food the bird eats most of. One word about treats. That treat should be something the bird can eat quickly. You see, if you give this bird a peanut as a treat, by the time it gets done eating the peanut, it'll probably forget what it got the peanut for, and also after a couple peanuts, it probably won't be hungry anymore and won't want to eat any peanuts. So the treat should be something it can eat quickly and something that it likes to eat. Some people think that your training session should last hours a day. Just isn't so. Usually, if you have to put a time on the training session, maybe 15 minutes is a good length of time for a training session. But what dictates the length of time of your training session is something called an attention span. The attention span is the time that you have the bird's attention, the length of time that the bird will actually want to eat the treats that you have to offer. Now, if your bird won't accept the treat, or if the bird takes the treat out of your hand, drops it on the floor, or if the bird is unusually upset or nervous, those are all signs that you're losing the bird's attention. And at that time, you should not continue to try and tame or train your bird. Because one of my rules of thumb is you never make the bird do anything it doesn't want to do. Very positive. Taming is all positive, no negatives. Put Coco back in the cage here. Now that you know the basic philosophy of taming birds, we're going to work with a wild bird and take it step by step how I would tame it. Some people think that taming is... This is a wild-caught Triton cockatoo. As you can tell by his actions, he's not tame or even comfortable in this environment. The first step to taming this bird is to find a treat that he likes to eat. For our purposes with this bird, we're going to use sunflower seeds as our example, but you use whatever treat you determine is your bird's favorite. Take that favorite food item completely out of his food bowl. Now, by doing this, you do two main things. First of all, make that food special. It's like with people, if you see something you can't have, you tend to want it all the more than if it's something that's readily available. And secondly, you create a better balanced diet for the bird. Chances are that bird was eating too many of his favorite treats and sort of disregarding the other diet. Once you take him out, he'll start eating those other foods that should be a big part of his diet. Make sure that you don't feed his favorite food item any more than he normally should have. Determine before you start taming your bird how much of that food he should eat in any one day. Give him only that much, because you've made it special. He may want to eat more than he should have. The steps to taming are simply this. Take his favorite treat, drop a couple of those seeds in his cup, and walk away. Walk all the way out of the room, out of his sight. Pretty soon the bird will walk over to the cup and eat those 2 seeds that you've dropped in there. You come back in after that and do it again. Drop a couple more in. Gradually you progress up to the cage where he'll accept you right near the cage, dropping these seeds in the cup. Now at this point the bird is starting to look forward to you coming up to the cage because he realizes you're only going to drop his favorite treat in the cup. He'll start looking at you or thinking of you in positive terms. Make sure you don't spend too much time, especially in the beginning, around the cage so that it'll make him nervous and upset. All positive and no negative. Soon the bird will be right next to the bowl waiting for you to drop the seeds in the cup. Then you can hold a seed in your fingers right outside the bars of the cage, and he'll actually take the seed right out of your fingers. Now at this point, you're starting to make physical contact with your bird, and you should know what to do if the bird bites you, how to discipline the bird. So let me bring Coco, my African gray, out, and we'll talk about biting and disciplines. Some people feel that being bitten is all part of having a parrot as a pet. I don't. I don't think your parrot should ever bite you, because they bite for a reason. They bite when they're nervous, when they're angry, they're upset, and I don't think you should ever push your bird to that point. Now, some parrots bite when they're playing, or maybe when they're stepping up on your hand. Many parrots will use their beak as sort of a third foot to step up on your hand. And you should learn the difference between grasping to step on your hand and biting. Baby birds sometimes will even sort of explore around your finger, trying to find out what's inside this here, what's this hard thing inside here. All 3 of these cases I think can be disciplined with a sharp verbal no. I think that the startle effect of that sharp no is enough to tell the bird that he's done something wrong. Now the bird that bites you to hurt you is a whole different problem altogether. Some examples of birds biting you to hurt you. One, very misunderstood, is misplaced aggression. That usually happens when a bird picks a person as its mate, which quite often happens with parrots in captivity. Usually when the bird picks a person as its mate, it will try and drive away other people, just like a parrot in the wild with its mate will try and drive away other birds. For instance, if Coco had accepted me as her mate, and a person walked by, Coco might want to try and drive that person away, and might even want to bite that person because she's so mad at that person being in our territory. Misplaced aggression happens when she wants to bite that bird so bad she gets so frustrated she reaches down and bites me. That's misplaced aggression. She bites me wanting to bite them, or thinking that she liked to bite them, but I take it in the end. Another case where people normally get bitten is when a bird bites for a desired response. That's if you put your finger inside a bird's cage, the bird bites your finger and you go away. Many parrots will soon learn that if they don't want people around, all they have to do is bite them and they'll go away. That's biting for a desired response. The most common case in which a parrot will bite people is when you are making your bird do something it does not want to do, like to get on your hand from the cage or out of the cage or off of a perch, especially off of your shoulder. How many of us have had the parrot on the shoulder and you went to get it off and it bites your hand? You end up scraping the bird on the cage or rolling around on the ground or up against the couch to get the bird off. That's very, very common. Now, with all these cases, you first have to understand why the bird bit you, what you were trying to make the bird do, or what was the reason you got bitten. And then you should discipline the bird. Some disciplines that other people use with birds. One person, many people as a matter of fact, even recommend letting the bird bite you and not showing the bird that it hurts. Maybe this will work with smaller birds, but I think anybody that tries that with a larger bird should see a psychiatrist, probably right after he sees a doctor to get his finger fixed. Some people will hit the bird when the bird bites them. Others will hold it by the tail. Others still, and I heard this before, would even dump the bird in a bucket of water. Now, all of these disciplinary actions are physical. They're treating the bird, again, like a dog. They don't understand physical discipline like dogs. Dogs understand it very well. They fight. They use physical discipline and physical aggression. Parrots don't. Parrot confrontations are very non-physical. It's usually nothing more than wings flapping and yelling and screaming. And for instance, if another bird is coming into one bird's territory, they'll scream and yell and drive him out of the territory. The intruder will retreat with no argument. But in captivity, we have created such an unnatural environment for these birds that they can't flee, you see? So they do the only thing that they know to do, and that is to bite. That's why I think emotional disciplines work best with birds. An example of emotional discipline is if the bird bites you while you're out working with it and training it. The bird bites you, you tell it no, put it back in the cage, close the door, and walk away. Thus denying the bird all the positive things that go along with training, like the treats and rewards in your contact with the bird. Now, that works only with a bird that would rather be with you than in its cage. Obviously, if the bird bites you because it wants to go in the cage, if you put it there, you're just reinforcing the bird going back into reinforcing the bird biting you, giving it what it wants. Now, if that's the case with your bird, or if you're not sure why the bird bit you, a good disciplinary action is to put the bird on the floor. Don't throw him, just put the bird on the floor. Leave him there for a short period of time, then come back and pick the bird up, and you've created the discipline. Now, you put the bird right square on the floor like this and leave him alone. Just walk away from him. After 15 or 20 seconds, you can come back and pick up the bird. Now, that may not seem like a whole lot, but a bird that was trapped in the jungle usually will feel vulnerable to predators on the floor. It's like their instincts tell them every predator in the world can catch him on the floor. But when he's up here on your hand or up in a tree or on the cage, there's only a few predators that can catch him. So they don't like being on the floor. They're trap birds. But if you have a bird that was raised in captivity, usually that bird will just look up, say thank you, and go over to play under the couch. But with those hand-fed birds or those hand-raised birds, you have another discipline that they will accept, and that is, in the wild, a baby parrot, will sometimes be a little aggressive trying to get the food from its parent. Parent will growl at it and kind of tap on its beak to sort of beat it back. And for that reason, these birds who are raised in captivity will accept a light form of physical discipline from a parent figure. I never recommend that you hit a bird at all because you can cause physical harm. But you can sort of restrict the bird's beak. Just grab the bird's beak like this and kind of shake it back and forth. That light physical discipline is often enough to show that bird that he's done something wrong. Well, now that you know how to care for and tame your bird, it's time to learn to teach your bird behaviors, like a kiss. So to help introduce the next bird in the show with a little fanfare. Are you ready? You ready? Here we go. That boy, back inside. Back in. No, back inside. What do you mean no? You're all done now. Hurry up, back inside, right there. What? Oh, you forgot to show him your bow, is that right? Okay, go ahead, your big bow. Okay, saw the bow. We saw the bow. Pretty impressed. Okay, now back inside. No, we saw the bow. Back inside. Oh, good luck. We've got hawks and falcons in this show. Love to take your lunch. Okay, now hurry up, back inside. What, do you think you can handle yourself with those hawks? Do you know who's next? Higgins is next. What I thought. You just saw a bit of Pogo's routine from my bird show at the Denver Zoo. Now, everything you saw him do was a trained behavior. A trained behavior is something you teach a bird to do for a reward. That reward can be anything that gives the bird emotional or physical pleasure. It can be a scratch on the head, verbal praise, or food. And food is usually the strongest reward for most birds. It's got to be food that the bird likes to eat. In our case, we're using sunflower seeds. You use whatever food your bird likes to eat best, but make sure it's food that it can eat quickly. Now, also in that segment from the Denver Zoo, Pogo did 3 behaviors. I had to tell him exactly when to do those behaviors and exactly which behaviors to do. The way I communicated that to him was using cues. A cue is a sound or an action that tells the bird exactly what to do. Hello, Pogo. Hello. Now we're going to demonstrate those 3 behaviors with Pogo here and show you their cues. The first one he did was a head shake, no, and this is a cue. I point my thumb backwards like this. That boy. Head shake, yes, my 2 hands right in front of me. And to bow, my left hand just like this. My left hand like this, that boy. You should also know that there's 2 main types of behavior. There's 2 main, okay. Hand cue. There's 2 main types of behaviors your bird may learn. There's a learned behavior, often called a trained behavior, and then there's an innovative behavior. Learned behavior, you have to actually show the bird exactly what to do, usually step by step. An innovative behavior is when you catch your bird doing something on his own. Now, an innovative behavior, this is one that I'll show you here. This is his head shake, no. I caught him doing that. That's part of a rouse. A lot of birds will just shake their feathers out like that. Caught him doing it, rewarded him, and got him to do it again. Back to your bow, huh? A learned behavior, an example of a learned behavior, is when you teach your bird to step up on your hand. You're actually showing him exactly what to do. You're encouraging him to step on your hand for the reward. Now, another learned behavior is when you teach your bird to fly back to the perch. This is my cue to teach Pogo to fly back to the perch. When I move my right hand like this. You ready? You're not ready? Here we go. That boy, and reward him. One more time on that learned behavior. Come up here. Now watch your hand cue. Here we go. So now you should understand that when a bird does something right, you should reward it to help encourage it to do that behavior again. But sometimes it's kind of hard to tell the bird exactly what it got rewarded for. For that purpose, we use what's known as a bridging stimulus, or commonly called a bridge. Now, a bridge is a sound, or even an action sometimes, that tells the bird that it's just done something right, that it should expect a reward. Some people will use clickers and buzzers as bridging stimuli. I prefer to use just a verbal good, because sometimes you're walking through the living room and your bird may offer a spectacular, innovative behavior, and by the time you fumble around and find your clicker, he's long since forgot what he got bridged for or gotten the reward for. So always use a verbal bridge, good, and then reward the bird. I'm going to show you now just how important a bridge or bridging stimulus is in your training. This is Sebastian, a hyacinth macaw. I want to show you how I taught him to hang by his beak on my finger like that. I think that'll help you realize just how important the timing of your bridge is. Now, the way I started that out was I used a small seed that he could eat quickly, that he really liked, held it right behind my finger. As he tried to sort of move my finger away to get to that treat. As soon as he touched my finger, I bridged him. I said, good, and I gave him the seed as a reward. After a couple times of doing that, he soon realized that all he had to do was touch my finger to get the reward. Now, you can probably imagine what would happen if I was a little late with my bridge. He might even think that I wanted him to actually bite my finger to get the reward. And obviously, with a bird like this, that could be a real problem. Well, now that you have the tools for training, we will start training behaviors. The first behavior you should teach your bird is to get on your hand right from the time that you start giving him seeds through the bars of the cage. That's training. When he takes the first seed out of your hand, you tell him, good, establishing your bridge at that time. Then you work around to the front of the cage to where he'll accept you just inside of the door, taking a seed out of your hand. Every time he takes that seed, tell him, good, as a bridge. Work only at his pace. Don't go too fast. When he takes that seed from your hand without hesitation, that's a key phrase. When he does it without hesitation, that's your cue to continue on, to progress on. Now you're inside the bird's cage. You've got your one hand inside the cage. You're giving him seeds out of your hand, then put 2 hands in. Lay one on the perch. Encourage him to get 1 foot up on your hand. Good! As soon as he does, bridge and reward him. Let him go back to the perch. That's very important. He gets to go back to the perch. On your hand, good! Bridge and reward him back to the perch. After he does that, without hesitation, work to where he'll step good up with both feet on your hand, and then back on the perch. Don't spend too much time with him just on your hand. Let him go back to the perch. Okay, make that a trained behavior. On your hand, back to the perch. On your hand, back to the perch. Once you've got that as a trained behavior, and he does it without hesitation, get him outside of the cage, You can bring him outside as long as he's not nervous. Don't destroy his confidence. Make sure that he's completely at ease with you, and then it's time to go on to train other behaviors. The first behavior I usually teach birds, which is usually the easiest for them to learn, is a kiss. Good. Well, I just put Sebastian away, and now we have Lolita, my yellow-naped Amazon parrot. She's going to help us demonstrate how to teach your bird to do a kiss. And we're going to also show you that a kiss is a very simple behavior that many birds can learn in minutes. We're going to show you that with Lolita because she does not yet know a kiss, and we're going to actually train her to do this kiss. First, let me walk through the steps to training the kiss. First of all, you take your bird's favorite treat. We're using sunflower seeds. Put it right between your lips, like this. And then you have another seed in your right hand, right here. You encourage the bird with your right hand, and be watching the seed in your right hand, up to your lips. As soon as he sees that seed in your lip, take it out of your lip. As soon as he takes it out of your lip, say, good, bridge him, and reward him with the seed in your right hand. You do that until the bird does it without hesitation. Then you're ready for the next step. And the next step is to put the seed between your teeth, like this. Then, as you encourage the bird up, the bird will go to take the seed out of your teeth, and you cover it with your lips. As soon as the bird touches your lips, bridge and reward it. Do that until the bird does it without hesitation. That's a key phrase, without hesitation. And then you're ready to take the seed out of your teeth altogether and just bring the bird up to your lips. Now, once the bird is going to your lips, almost out of habit at this point, and touching your lips for that reward, start phasing out your hand cue. By that I mean, instead of cueing it with your hand right here all the way up to your lips, phase out that hand cue. Bring it down to here. That way, the bird will realize that it's not just following the seed, but it's taking its own incentive to go up to your lips. It'll realize more of the behavior that you're actually trying to get it to do. Okay, now at this point, I'm going to pick up Lolita and actually try and train her to do this kiss. But watch my cues, the hand cue, the verbal cue, and watch my bridges. The timing of the bridge is very, very important, okay? Come on up here, sweetheart. That girl. Now let me show you, let me demonstrate that Lolita does not yet know how to do a kiss. I'll give her the two cues that we use, that I would ultimately use to cue her to do this kiss. And that is a verbal cue, kiss, and a hand cue just like this. Watch this. Kiss.
Hello.
Kiss. Kiss.
Hello.
Kiss. Kiss. Obviously, she does not know what a kiss is. So now, I'm going to train her to do a kiss. Here we go. Back up here.
Hello.
Kiss. Kiss.
Hello.
Good. And give her this seed. Do it again. Kiss. Good. And give her this seed. Repetition is the key. Kiss. Good. Good. And again. Kiss. Good. Now, she's doing that basically without hesitation. Let's go from there. We'll put one in my lips, or in my teeth. Here we go. Kiss, kiss. Good. She didn't get it. See? Do it again. Kiss, kiss. Good. Just touch my lips. Kiss. No. Kiss. 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 Good. Again. Kiss. Good. One more time. Kiss. 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 Good. And again, until she does it without hesitation. Kiss. 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 Good. And again. Kiss. Kiss. Good. Kiss. Good. Now we'll get rid of the seed and try it. Kiss. Good. Okay, a little more. Kiss, kiss, kiss. Good. She's making a little bit of action on her own. Let's keep going. Kiss. Finish that seed. Ready? Kiss. Good. She didn't quite touch my lips, but she made the effort. That's what I rewarded her for. Finish that seed. Kiss, kiss, kiss. Good. She made a little more of an effort that time. We keep going. One more. No, not that. Kiss. Good. She's starting to make a little more effort. I'll start phasing out my hand cue. Never reward her for those other behaviors that she does. Here we go. Kiss, kiss. Good. That was a good effort on her. See how far my hand cue is now? It's a little farther away. Still my verbal cue. Kiss, kiss. Good. That was a real good one. My hand cue's way away from her now. One more. Finish that seed. Ready? Kiss, kiss. Good. At this point, she's making that effort all on her own, just with the hand cue and the verbal cue. I would call this now a trained behavior. It's not real strong at this point, but she knows what she's supposed to do. She's no longer just following the cue. Now, there's one thing that really helped me to train that bird to kiss, and that is, see where she's sitting on my hand? I have good control of her. If she was walking up and down my arm, she'd be out of control. I'd be chasing her up and down my arm, trying to get her to kiss me. So I teach the bird, first of all, to sit on my hand, right down here. Good. As soon as she gets to the right spot on my hand, I bridge her and reward her. And usually what I'll do, I'll even lay a finger or my thumb over the bird's toe, just like that. As soon as I put my finger over the bird's toe, good, I bridge and reward the bird. That way the bird will realize that when my finger is sitting on top of the bird's toe, just like that, good, that's exactly where it's supposed to be, okay? That's an important step in training. It gives you a lot of control of your bird to keep it right there on your hand. I encourage you to train that probably even before a kiss. Now, many people kind of wonder how long a bird will remember a behavior like this. Birds basically can remember behaviors for years, but when it's a new behavior like this one, I try and really reinforce in this bird's mind the new behavior by having it do a couple of the other behaviors it already knows, and then go back to the new one, like the kiss. I'll show you what I mean. Ready? Bark. Good. And do a cat. Good. Now here's the test. Kiss, kiss. Good. That is now a trained behavior. Let's see if we can teach you another trained behavior. This one is another pretty easy behavior to teach a bird. It's a wave. And most birds will step up on your hand with one foot first. As your bird goes to step on your hand, bridge it and reward it while the foot's in the air. Watch, just like this. Good. See, I didn't let her touch my hand. As soon as she picked her foot up, I bridged and rewarded her. Do it again. Good. As soon as she got her foot in the air, I rewarded her. Now, you do that until the bird does it without hesitation. Don't let the bird touch your finger, because a lot of times if they grab your finger, they'll hang on to it and not let it go. Just like this, repetition, wave, wave, wave. See, what she's trying to do is get my finger with her beak. A lot of birds will step on your hand with their beak as sort of a third foot, or with their beak first. If your bird is inclined to do that, like Lolita here, hold your sunflower seed or your treat up high. So that way her eye contact is with the seed up high, and then try it. I guess, good. See that? How she was watching the seed and she went with her foot first. It's important now to start phasing out your hand cue. Move your hand cue farther away from the bird. That'll let the bird realize it, and it's not supposed to actually try and grab your finger, but it's actually just supposed to pick its foot up for the reward. Like, watch this. Farther away. Whoop, hang on. Wave, 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 wave. Good. You've got two cues here. Verbal cue, wave, hand cue, wiggling your finger. Put your foot down. When you're teaching a wave, always make sure that the bird's foot goes back to the perch. You can encourage that by putting the seed under the perch like that. Draw her tension down and do it again. Wave. Good. Just getting her foot off the perch is what you want in the beginning. Put your foot down. Wave. Good. See, I'm phasing my hand cue out now. I'm getting farther away. She can't possibly reach my hand now. Wave, 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 wave. No crackers. Wave. Good. Now she knows. This again is another trained behavior. She knows that she's simply supposed to pick her foot up for a reward. And that's the beginning of the wave. Let me go get Pogo now, and we'll show you how to improve this wave behavior. One way to really help improve that wave behavior is by delaying the bridge. That means that once you have your bird picking its foot up, expecting to be bridged right here at this point, you don't bridge it at that point. You delay the bridge. Most parrots will put their foot back down on the perch. At that point, when he puts his foot on the perch, bridge and reward him there. After a couple times of that, the parrot will soon realize he's got to pick his foot up and put it down to be bridged and rewarded. And that's the beginning of the wave behavior, okay? Now, some birds, when they've got their foot up, if you delay the bridge, they'll offer a sort of innovative behavior. That's what happened with Pogo here. I'll show you what happened. I had him to the point where he had his foot up. I delayed his bridge. This is what he did. It's now his wave. Now, boy, see how he scratches his beak like that? Had his foot up. I didn't bridge him. Scratched his beak. Bridged him, rewarded him, and that was in a trained behavior. Many times a bird will offer an innovative behavior that may even be more entertaining or cuter than the behavior you first had in mind. One more wave for us. That boy. Okay, now a couple minutes ago you saw Pogo demonstrate a few behaviors. I want to walk through each of those behaviors and show you how to train him, or at least a couple of them. The first one we're going to talk about is flying to the hand. The way you start that out is very gradually. Start right at the perch, have him step on your hand. Good. Bridge and reward him, and back to the perch. Good. Bridge and reward him. And then gradually you move farther away to where he's just hopping onto your hand right here. Good. Okay, back on the perch, reward him on the perch, a little farther away. Good. Until he's flying maybe a distance of 5 or 10 feet. Real important that you reward him back on the perch, because some birds will put a death grip on your hand, not let go of your hand unless they get a reward on the perch. They won't want to get off your hand. Now, if you want to teach a bird to fly back to the perch, same steps as flying to your hand, just like this. Hold the seeds beyond the perch. Good. Bridge and reward him back there. But with this behavior, you'll want to have a hand cue. The hand cue I use is this action right here. So you start that out in the beginning. As you're showing him the seeds, you're also doing this at the same time, putting a seed in your hand and motioning around like this. Okay, so this is the action. Good. Bridge and reward him. But you want to phase out your hand cue. Instead of cueing him back behind the perch here, you cue him on the side, and then gradually out in the front and in the front, like this. So that its cue is good right there, and then right back on the hand, and the cue is right here, until finally you can cue the bird just right in front of him, right here. And he knows he's supposed to fly to that point, okay? Next behavior you want to demonstrate is a head shake yes. Good. When I taught Pogo this behavior, it was an innovative behavior. I caught him doing it. I was bringing a piece of fruit to the cage, saw me come up with a piece of fruit, anticipated that fruit, was excited about it, bobbed his head up and down in his excitement. Bridge and rewarded him. Soon it was a trained behavior. But there's another way that you can show the bird what to do. All you have to do is hold the seed in front of him, move your hand up and down. Good. As his head follows your hand, bridge and reward him. With consistency, the bird will finally realize, consistency and repetition, that he's supposed to move his head up and down to get that reward. The way you get the hand cue into that, by the way, and this is my hand cue, the way you get that hand cue in is in the beginning, once you catch him doing it, an innovative behavior, or you're encouraging him like this, good. All you have to do is, once he realizes if he moves his head up and down, he'll get a reward, he'll start doing it over and over. At that point, put a very obvious cue in, like this. Very obvious. Good. Bridge and reward. And then phase out that hand cue. Bring it down here. Good. And then right down here. Good. But in the beginning, the bird doesn't even know what the cue is. He's just doing the action to get the reward. Now, the head shake no. Good. Again, with Pogo, it was an innovative behavior. Caught him doing it, part of his rouse. Some people will take a little piece of Scotch tape and sort of put it on the feathers of the bird's head, right in the back here. You can do that usually with a tame bird. And a lot of times it'll irritate them enough they'll shake their head when they do that. You bridge and reward them. Or you can even use the follow the seed method. Good. As soon as he follows the seed back and forth, good. Even a little bit, you bridge and reward him. Then your hand cue, this, good, is the same as this hand cue. It's the way you put it in anyway. The bird is doing the behavior for the reward, not from any particular cue. So you make this very obvious. Good. A very obvious action. Good. And he's just realizing that he's supposed to do that action for the reward in the very beginning anyway. Soon he'll relate this action with the reward. Okay, now I'm going to put Pogo back. We'll go get Coco, the African gray parrot, and bring her back out and demonstrate a couple other behaviors. Maybe you could tell everybody goodbye.
Goodbye.
Again? Goodbye?
Goodbye.
Thanks, Pogo. Goodbye. There you go, Coco. Now turn around and show everybody your pretty tail. Okay? Show them your tail. That a girl. Now next we're going to show you how to teach your bird to do that turnaround behavior. First of all, it helps if you start out with a perch like this. It limits the bird to lateral movement. It's a little more difficult to teach a bird than the other behaviors because you've got to have seeds in both hands. The way you start that, bring the bird usually down to one end of the perch. When she turn around here, Coco, that I grow. When she simply changes feet, her right foot will go over on the left-hand side, then you bridge and reward her, that's all. Good. And then bring her around with your left hand. Good. That's all you want at the very beginning, just for her to change feet. After she does that, without hesitation, then it's ready, then you're ready to go on to the next step. And the next step is just this. As soon as she changes feet, you don't give her the seed out of your right hand, but give it to her out of your left hand. Drop your right hand out from the bottom like this. Good. Good. You see? And then you start phasing out your hand cue. This will ultimately be your hand cue. When you move your finger like this, you can also put a verbal cue in, turn, or whatever you'd like. By phasing it out, instead of going to the back side of the perch, just go even with the perch, then to the front of the perch until you're all the way out in front. Now watch this. Turn. Good. One seed there, and one seed there. Then, when she does that, without hesitation, go to the next step. The next step is only one seed, like this. Turn around. Good. And then you can have your cue right out in front. Turn, turn. Good. And it's a trained behavior. Now, another behavior you might like to teach your bird is what many people call, show me how you love me. It works sort of like this. This is how the behavior looks. Love me? The way you train that, it's another learned behavior, just showing her what to do. Hold the seed between your fingers. Let her sort of take hold of the seed lightly. Turn her head toward your chest like this. Good. As soon as the top of her head touches your chest or your shirt, bridge and reward her like this. Good. And then you start phasing out your hand cue. By that I mean you move your hand cue just a little farther away so she can't touch the seed. Turn your hand. When she turns her head on her own, makes her own action, move her in toward your chest. As soon as she touches, bridge and reward her. Good. Just like that. See that again. Good. Phasing out your hand cue from here, down to here, down to here. All the time you can start putting in a verbal cue, love me, or whatever you'd like to say, like this. Love me. Good. Until you finally got that behavior trained. Now another behavior, this is what many people would call showing you how the bird goes to sleep, just like this. Good. Another learned behavior, simply showing the bird where you want her to put her head, just like this. Right there. Good. Now, you take that a little step further, you start phasing out your hand cue. Right down here, Co. Good. Put that on a verbal cue if you like. If you want to go even further than that, you can teach a bird to show you where her tail is just by putting the seed right under her tail feathers, right there. Good. See? As soon as she moves the tail feathers away, they find the seed, bridge and reward her. One more time. Down here. Down your tail. Good. Okay? Until that's a trained behavior. Again, you can put in your verbal cue, you can put in your hand cue. The hand cue is usually just something like this, part of the action that it took to train the behavior. Good girl. Okay, now many people wonder if it's possible to teach a bird to go to the bathroom at one place, or actually house train a bird like you would a dog or a cat. It's not nearly as easy as a dog or a cat, but it is possible. These are basically the steps. Now, most birds will go to the bathroom every 10 or 15 minutes. If you can notice when your bird is about to go, usually they'll give you a sign. They'll get a fixed stare in their eye. They'll stop walking around. The last sign that they'll give you is the skirt feathers, or the feathers at their feet will sort of drop out from under them. Just interrupt the bird's train of thought somehow. Go pick them up, booger, booger, pick them up and go put them on the perch or the cage, wherever you'd like for the bird to go to the bathroom. Sit and wait. All you have to do is sit and wait. When the bird finally goes, good, bridge and reward it. Pick it up, go back into the other room or wherever you happen to be. Do that as often as you can. See, the key to this is consistency. The more times you can catch a bird before it goes to the bathroom someplace else, interrupt its train of thought, put it on the perch, the quicker it's going to learn the behavior. It's a hard behavior mainly because there's 10 or 15 minutes between each behavior. Now, if you like, you can even put a cue with this. When you put the bird on the perch, you're waiting for him to go to the bathroom, you simply sit there and say, go, go. Finally, when he does, good. Pretty soon the bird will learn to recognize not only the place, but also the word with the action it's supposed to do, going to the bathroom. And you'll have a bird that will go to the bathroom where you want it to and when you want it to. A wise bird trainer once told me that the only limit to what you can teach your bird is your own imagination. And I think that, to me, this means that maybe it's not as important to know exactly the steps somebody else took to train a particular behavior as it is for you to understand the basic theory of the training techniques. By using your imagination, you gain a better insight into what the bird is thinking and feeling. You have a better understanding of why your bird does what it does, and you'll be better able to communicate to that bird what it is you want it to do. Now let's take just a moment and sort of review the important aspects of training. First of all positive and no negative. Never make the bird do anything it doesn't want to do. But train that bird to do that particular thing for a reward. There has to be a reason for birds to do things that you want them to do. That has to be positive reinforcement. It could be a scratch on the head, verbal praise, or food. And food is usually the strongest reward. But make sure you use food that it likes a lot. Its favorite treat works best. Food that it can eat quickly. And get used to keeping a few of those food items in your hand, those treats in your hand, so that you can be ready to give the bird that treat just as soon as he's ready to accept them. Now make sure you don't overfeed the bird's favorite treat, because they'll tend to eat too many of those if you let them. Also, you only have to keep those treats out of the bird's cage as long as you want to train the bird. They're a training tool. If you're not training your bird, by all means, just put those treats in the seed cup. They are a part of that bird's diet, and he should get them every day. The bridging stimulus is incredibly important in your training. You bridge exactly when a bird has done something right. The timing is critical. Make sure you watch your bird's attention span. Don't try to continue training the bird if the bird does not want to work or does not want to take the treat that you have to offer or the verbal praise or the scratch on the head. Unless that bird wants what you have to offer, don't try to train him. Lastly, work only at the bird's pace. When the bird does that particular step or behavior without hesitation, that's your cue to progress on to the next step or the next behavior. Now, one thing that most everybody wants their bird to do is to talk. Let's discuss that next.
How much is that dog in the window?
Good boy, Paco. You know, many people still think that all parrots in captivity should talk, when, in fact, most have the ability, but not as many have the desire. I think that maybe it's safe to say that of all the parrots that talk, they have three things in common. They're healthy, they're happy, and they're at ease in their environment. These are what I consider to be the requirements for a bird to learn to mimic sounds or to talk in captivity. Now, you cannot make a parrot talk. They talk to amuse themselves. They mimic sounds that they hear often and sounds that they like to reproduce. The first step to teaching a bird to talk is to make sure that that bird is at ease or comfortable in his environment. Taming will help that, but it's not absolutely necessary. You see, there's many parrots that are not tame that will still talk, but they are usually sounds, the sounds that this bird mimics are usually sounds that it has learned when the people are not around or when it's in a comfortable environment. For instance, mimics dogs and cats and doorbells and door knocking, things like that. And the bird usually won't mimic sounds when the person is around or people are around until they're completely at ease with those people. Now, records and tapes, they may help with some birds, but again, they've got to meet the prerequisites. Healthy, happy, at ease in their environment. Usually, I believe your own voice is the best way to teach a bird to talk, by mimicking your own voice. And female parrots, or larger parrots, will usually talk just as well as the males. But in parakeets or budgegars, as they're sometimes called, and in cockatiels, the males are usually the better talker of the two. Parrots are never too old to learn to talk or to mimic sounds. They keep learning all their life, and they usually get better. Myna birds, on the other hand, will learn most everything they ever say in their first year. Now, many people think that the African gray parrot is the best talking type of parrot in the world. I think it's awful hard to say the African gray is best. There are many other good ones, yellow napes and double yellowheads, many other types, and no two birds are alike. But one thing is for certain, that when an African gray talks or mimics sounds, it has an amazing ability to reproduce those sounds almost perfectly. I'd like to show you two outstanding African gray parrots. First, we're going to meet Mort with his trainer Gary Densler from Frisch's World of Birds show at the Cincinnati Zoo. We're here at the beautiful birdhouse at the Cincinnati Zoo, and as you may be able to tell, it's a very popular place today. Gary, I understand that your show only runs during the summer months here at the zoo.
That's right, Steve.
Well, how long has it been since Mort's actually worked in the shows?
It's been about 3 months now.
3 months. Well, Gary, maybe you could run him through a few of his behaviors for us. I'll hold his microphone for him, okay?
All right.
Here we go.
Okay. What's your name?
Mort.
Mort, huh? You want to give me a kiss, Mort? That boy. You want to throw the audience a big kiss? Big kiss. That boy. Mort, we got some pretty girls here today. What do you do when you see a pretty girl? That's right. The old wolf whistle gets them every time, doesn't it, Mort? Mort, that's fine if they're by themselves, but if they're with their boyfriend, you can get in a lot of trouble that way. What kind of bird would you be then? You'd be a bad bird, that's right. Mort's learning to whistle a tune, and we're going to get him going and have a pop star in our hands. What kind of star are you, Mort? What kind of star are you? What kind of star are you? Mort's a pop star, that's right. You want to whistle your tune for us? You ready? Here we go. Good, Mort. Want to give him a big wave goodbye? Come on, let's give him a big wave. That boy.
That's great, Gary. Well, thank you very much. Well, now let's go to the Minnesota Zoo and meet the Public Relations Director, Nancy Gibson, one of the star performers in their show. This, Nancy, I understand this African gray parrot here is the star of your show. Maybe you could introduce him for us.
I don't introduce him. He introduces himself.
Oh, okay.
Okay? What's your name?
Alexander.
Alexander the Gray.
Alexander the Gray. Many people think that the African gray is the best talking parrot in the world. I think that they probably have an ability to mimic sound better than most. I don't know if they're the best, but they certainly are high on the list, that's for sure. Alexander here is probably one of the best talking or mimicking parrots that I've ever seen in my life. Nancy, maybe you could just sort of run through a couple of his behaviors.
Sure. Can you say hello?
Hello.
It may not sound like too much, but listen to this. Can you say that in another voice?
Hello.
That is great. Now, he probably mimicked that from two different people. One with a high-pitched voice and one with a low-pitched voice. He mimics sounds just like they hear them, or they try to anyway.
Right. What if I say hi?
How are you?
How are you? Isn't that nice?
Really cute. It's very, very clear. Boy, African grays have such an ability to reproduce sounds just as they hear them. It's just phenomenal.
This is a nice way to start the morning. Can you say good morning?
Good morning.
Isn't that nice? Start your day off right?
Sure.
Right. Well, Alexander lives at the zoo, so he's picked up a few of the animal sounds here.
Okay.
First of all, we've got our state bird. It's not the mosquito. Can you do your loon? Good, nice loon.
great.
Reminds you of the nice north woods.
Sure.
Okay, Alexander, what about a horse? Good horse. It's a miniature horse.
A miniature horse, of course.
Right.
What else does he normally do in the show there, Nancy?
One thing he likes to do, what do you say if Mr. Martin talks too much?
Quiet.
Quiet, that'll put you in your
Great.
place. What if he does a nice job? What if Mr. Martin does a nice job? I guess you don't do a nice job.
Never done a nice job.
Really, also he whistles. A lot of birds like to whistle. Can you call the dog?
Huh?
And another whistle that he's learned here. What's your other whistle?
That's great. Now, you know, some people still think that if you teach a bird to whistle before he learns to talk, that he won't learn to talk. He'll just simply whistle. It's just an old myth, an old wives' tale, I think. Birds reproduce sounds as they hear them, whether it's a whistle or a spoken voice. It's just a sound to them, and it doesn't really matter if it's a whistle or not. So don't worry about teaching the birds to whistle before they talk.
Right. This is something that he learned, and really I start to question who's training who. He learned the telephone ring. Can you do the telephone? And that brought his keepers back into the room, so then he got the attention.
Birds learn to relate sounds with situations quite often. A lot of times you'll see birds that'll mimic a sound after they hear something like a telephone. They hear a telephone ring, and then all of a sudden the bird is saying hello, or a positive response. I get the keepers to come back in the room. They'll realize they make that sound, the person will come back in the room. Positive reinforcement for them.
Also, another sound he hears a lot here is the sound of our pager. A pager is a little message box that we have to wear. Can you do your pager?
That is amazing. Can you do that again? Do that one more time.
Alexander, can you do the pager?
That is just amazing.
Right.
Has he got any more?
One I really like. This really sends the electricians off wild. Can you do your feedback?
That's great. You know, when you're doing a show and you have the microphones, they feed back a little bit. That's
Right.
great.
Well, he also counts.
He counts. Okay,
Right.
let's hear this.
Okay, you ready?
Ready.
1, 2, 3. 4.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
And he can add.
We can add, too.
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Very smart bird. Okay. What's 1 plus 3? 4.
That's nice.
How are you on subtraction?
Hopefully better than the parrot.
Okay. What's 7 minus 3? 4.
Got that right?
Okay. This one I know will stump you.
Okay.
Okay. What's the square root of 49 minus 3? 4. Beat
That's
you.
amazing. I hope by now you folks have realized the cue that Nancy has given the bird to say 4. Nancy, could you explain that a little bit?
It's very easy. 3. 4.
Simple as that. Just say the word 3 and the bird reproduces the sound 4. We're going to talk a little bit more about cues and how to teach your bird to do things just like this when we come back.
Can you say goodbye?
Goodbye.
Those were obviously two very talented birds, but what makes them exceptional is the fact that they talked when their trainers wanted them to talk, or they talked on cue. Now, teaching your bird to talk on cue is basically like any other innovative behavior you might teach your bird to do. You simply catch it in the act, catch it talking, bridge it, and reward it. Now, obviously, your bird has to already talk before you can get it to talk on cue. Once you've rewarded that bird a few times for saying a particular word or making a particular sound, it should start to realize if it says that word again, it'll get a reward, and start repeating that word over and over for the reward. It's at this time you want to put your cue in, or your cues. You can put 2 cues in. You can put a hand cue in. You can put a verbal cue in. Your hand cues can be any action you want. Your verbal cue can be any sound you want. For instance, if your bird says hello, and you want your bird to say hello, when you say hi, and when you wave your hand, you simply do this. When you can anticipate your bird is about to say hello, you do this. You say, hi, hi, hi. Both of those very obvious cues. At that point, when the bird says hello, bridge and reward him. Now, the bird will be saying hello only because he remembers it'll get him a reward. But with time, the bird will learn to associate the cues with the behavior, with the bird's hello.
Hello.
Let's show you a couple of my birds from my show here. This is Lolita and this is Paco. They're both yellow-naped Amazons. Could you tell everybody hello?
Hello.
Thank you. Maybe you could do that a little more politely. Say hello.
Hello.
That girl. Now tell us your name. What's your name? That girl. She also has a little bit of a song that she does on a hand cue. The other ones were verbal cues. This is a hand cue. One more. That girl. There you go. Now let's go say hi to Paco over here. Say hi, Paco.
Hi, Paco.
Now just say hello.
Hello. How are you?
Now, those first 2 were verbal cues. I asked him to say hi, Paco. Hi, Paco is his cue to repeat hi, Paco, and hello is cue to repeat hello. But his cue to say how are you is when I wiggle my thumb just like that. He has another hand cue. It's the same hand cue that Lolita sings her song to, but he's got his own song that he sings to it. It's this one.
Oh, what is that dog in the window?
That boy. Now in the show, I don't continue that hand cue through the whole behavior, but rather I just use it to start off both of their songs like this.
Oh, what is that dog in the window?
That boy. Now one other one that Paco has, one of my favorites, and again it's another hand cue. This is a hand cue when I go just like this. It's his cry. Watch this. Don't cry. That boy, Paco. Now, the key to teaching your bird to talk on cue is to get your bird to repeat a sound or a word over and over for a reward. And then you put in your hand cues or your verbal cues. But the key is to get them doing it over and over for a reward. Okay, now let me put these 2 birds back, and I'll come right back and answer some of the most commonly asked questions. You know, people have asked me questions about parrots for years, and so I wrote down a few of the most commonly asked questions, and I'll take just a few minutes to answer them for you. How many family members should work with a bird? I think that the more family members that work with a bird, the better. mainly because if only one person works with a bird, the bird may tend to like that person more than everybody else in the family, may even become aggressive to the other people in the family. But I do tend to draw the line with children, because some youngsters will be a little too rough, handling the birds and petting the birds like dogs. So use your own judgment as if you want your children to handle your birds or not. Is it better to have one bird or more than one bird in a household? I think that all depends. See, if you have a bird that's not tame, if you bring in a tame bird, that might help the taming process, might give the bird confidence and encouragement in taming him down. But if you bring in another bird that is not tame also, that might slow down the taming process. See? Now the same is true with talking. If you have a bird that does not talk, and you bring in a bird that does talk, it might encourage the bird to talk, because birds learn to talk better from birds than they do from people. They accept birds better than they accept people. But if you bring in a bird that does not talk, then it will slow down the talking process, because the two birds will be interacting with each other, communicating in sort of like bird talk back and forth, and they may mimic each other, but it won't be human speech. Okay. How many behaviors can a bird learn, and how often do I have to work those behaviors? Each bird has its own capacity for learning, just like people do. And the number of behaviors that a bird can learn is limited by that capacity, and also by the trainer's imagination. Now, I knew a bird that knew 30 behaviors on cue. Birds can remember behaviors for months, if not years. But I always recommend that to keep them fresh in your bird's mind, you go over the behaviors once every few weeks or once every month or so. Is it true that if my bird whistles before it talks, it won't learn to talk? I get this question an awful lot. It's an old myth, an old wives' tale. A bird learning to whistle is learning to mimic sounds. Whistling is quite often the first step to talking. Now, true, there are some birds that will only whistle and they won't talk, and it's because they're more comfortable whistling than they are talking. See? My bird picks its feathers. What do I do? If you've ever been associated with this problem, you know the frustrations of dealing with this problem. There are so many theories as to what causes feather picking in parrots, everything from diet to boredom and frustration. And there's just as many theories as to how to treat it. Now, in some cases, a change of environment will help. For instance, you change the bird's cage around, put new toys in the cage, even get him a new cage. Change the location in the house where he is, put him in a new room, get him to a new family, even put another bird in the cage. Some of those things have worked in the past. There is something, by the way, called cockatoo syndrome. Affects only cockatoos. And the feather problem is sort of a symptom. The birds usually die. There's really no way to treat them, but it's a very long, drawn-out disease. But the feather condition is usually one of the symptoms of cockatoo syndrome. There's no known cure at this time. Now, just recently, one of the leading bird veterinarians in the U.S., Dr. Roscoff, and his partner, Dr. Warple, have found that many of these feather problems in parrots are caused by a hormonal imbalance within that bird. They've also found that sometimes there's some sort of fungus in the feather follicles, and in these cases, these birds can be treated medically. So if you have a parrot with feather problems, you might want to see your veterinarian about treating it medically. What should I do if my bird flies away? That's a question that isn't asked all that often, but I think it should be asked. It's important that you know what to do if your bird flies away. First of all, try and locate the bird. If you can't locate him in a reasonable amount of time, then put an ad in the lost and found column in the local newspaper in case somebody does find him that day or the next day. They'll know who to call. And then go back out and look again, right after you put that ad in. Bear in mind that that parrot, once it's left you in the security of your house, it's probably very, very scared, and this scared parrot will hide. You might be right under the tree that the bird's sitting in. You can't see him, and he's hiding there very quietly, trying not to be obvious, like its instincts tell him predators prey on those obvious-looking, out-of-place creatures. One thing you might try to help locate him is to bring another bird in its cage outdoors. Sometimes that bird might be vocal and start communicating with the other bird. You can just listen to hear if you can find him. You can locate him a lot of times by the sound like that. Now, once you locate your bird, there's many ways to try and get him down. You can use its favorite food, a person that it knows very well, another bird that it knows, its cage, all those things that it can identify with, its sort of security and positive images and positive thoughts. But try and let the bird climb down out of the tree by himself. A lot of times if you try and climb the tree to get your bird, that'll startle him, scare him out of the tree. Even though he likes you, just all that action might scare him. And a scared bird flying out there in that wild sort of state that he's not used to can travel for a long distance, okay? Now, just because your bird flies to you in the house very well and may even fly to you when you call it, it doesn't mean that he'll do that outside. You see, it's hard to predict how a bird will act in a new environment like the outdoors. Now, I tell you, many birds have been lost this way, okay? Last question here, what type of bird should I get? This is always one of the hardest ones for me to answer because I never encourage anybody to get a bird as a pet or to get a parrot as a pet. See, you may have noticed from your own experience or from your own, or from just watching this tape even, that having a parrot as a pet is a commitment that not everybody is ready for. I think that dogs and cats are a lot less work, take a lot less time, and are far better pets for the average person. See, even the best pet parrot may still have bad habits, and in the wrong hands, that bird may be neglected or even mistreated. There are many factors that help determine how good a pet a bird will be. And no two parrots or no two birds are alike. So it's almost impossible to say that one species is better than another species. One thing is, there is no doubt that a parrot hatched in captivity and hand-raised will make a better pet than a bird that's imported from its native land. And many of these parrots are being bred in captivity very successfully. Now, one of the most foremost authorities on captive breeding parrots is Tony Silva in Chicago, Illinois. Let's hear from him next. Well, Tony, who's your friend?
This is a little citron-crested cockatoo bred in my collection earlier this year. She's about 4 months old.
And they breed well in captivity?
They do rather well, except chicks can be very delicate at 3 to 4 weeks.
Well, they take a special diet?
No, not at all. This chick was raised on the same formula that I hand-rear all my other chicks on, which is monkey chow, with fruits or vegetables, and this is made in a soupy consistency and fed from a spoon.
How do you decide what type of birds to breed or what type of birds they have in your collection for breeding?
Okay, generally I choose species that are either rare or declining in the wild, such as the citron, which is being severely affected by deforestation, or species that are little known.
Well, you know, you've traveled the world over studying parrots in the wild. Have you noticed this deforestation affecting other birds?
Almost certainly. It's caused the rapid decline of the red-throated lory in the highlands of Fiji. It's caused the disappearance of villagers' macaw from coastal Brazil and has resulted in the disappearance of scarlet macaws from most of Central America and Mexico.
Boy, is there anything that people can do because of this or for this habitat destruction?
Most certainly. What we can do is we can concentrate on establishing captive self-sustaining populations of all the parrots that we have in confinement.
Breeding in captivity.
That's right.
Well, many people still think that it takes a large aviary outside and you never can go near the birds and upset them. Is that true?
Oh, not necessarily at all. Cages, in my opinion, are the least important aspects of breeding parrot. My cages are by far not the largest around. I feel that diet is the most important point, that we should give them as much as possible. Protein is important. My birds get seed, both dry and sprouted. They get dry dog food. They get all kinds of table scraps and meat.
Basically a wide variety of foods.
Correct.
How about tame birds? Many people still think tame birds can't be bred.
Oh, that's not at all. My birds, a lot of them are tame. For example, I have slender-billed conures, the parents of which I can handle. This is one of the young from that pair. The parents were bred in my collection, and I can reach in there and grab the hen. In my opinion, hand-reared birds are better because they often allow liberties. They take a better diet, and they're often a lot better because they don't feel stressed like a lot of wild parrots, or they're not aloof to the breeder.
Well, But is that something the average person can expect of their tame birds if they breed them?
No, not at all. Handling tame birds is the exception. A lot of them, like my pairs of blue and golds, which are former pets, are very nasty and would not even hesitate to attack.
But I think basically what you're saying is that breeding parrots is much easier than most people
Almost
thought.
Certainly, and it offers the last hope for a lot of species.
Thank you, Tony. We're back here at the Cincinnati Zoo, this time inside a memorial built to honor Martha, the last passenger pigeon, and Incus, last Carolina parakeet, both of which died here at the Cincinnati Zoo. Martha died in 1914 and Incus in 1918. You know, the Carolina parakeet was the only native parrot to the United States, and like the passenger pigeon, was pushed to extinction through habitat destruction and shooting. We all know that under the right conditions, parrots trapped in the wild can accept life in a household. They'll learn to adjust to confinement, new diets, people, and even the household pets. It's estimated that there's around 1 million parrots a year brought into this country for the pet trade, and probably that many going to Europe and Japan also. But what most people don't realize is that for every 1 parrot that makes it into a household, somewhere around 10 others have died during trapping and handling and shipping and quarantine. But by far the most serious threat to parrots in the wild is habitat destruction. Most parrots live in the tropical rainforests, and the tropical rainforests are being destroyed at the rate of around 50 acres per minute. There is a very real need for conservation and captive breeding and education. In the shows that I present, I utilize free flight and natural behaviors like mimicry. I try and put across an education and a conservation message using entertainment as a vehicle for that message. There are no parrots riding bicycles and scooters and answering telephones in my show. The theme is entertainment and education without exploitation. Now, during this tape, I have tried to give you better insights into what your bird is thinking and feeling that will help you understand your bird better and develop a better relationship with that bird. I hope I have also helped you realize that not all parrots make good pets, nor do all people make good trainers. But there is a very good place for those parrots that are not good pets, and that's a captive breeding program. I hope that someday that there will be no more destruction of parrots' habitats, and that there will be enough birds hatched in captivity and raised in captivity that there will be no longer a need to import parrots from the wild for the pet trade. And perhaps then there will be never another species of parrot that will follow the Carolina parakeet into extinction.
Rolling and action.
Well, next we're going to
Start over again. And action.
Don't worry, I got it. Keep rolling. I can't remember that line.
How are you?
I'm not good. How do you decide what type of species you have in your breeding collection?
I generally choose...
Hey, Mort?
You want to start again?
Yeah.
Let's start again.
What if Mr. Martin does a nice job? I guess you don't do a nice job.
I've done a nice job.
What do you say if Mr. Martin talks too much?
Quiet.
You forgot to show him your bow, is that right? Okay, go ahead, your big bow. I think that we want to make that perfect if we're gonna do it.
Can you get her to do that with your hand off camera, though?
Yes, I can. Sure. Train bird. I love it. Let's go with that.
Great.